Welcome to the Restoration Pros Unplugged podcast. In each episode, we're going to bring you insightful interviews and discussions with top restoration industry leaders. We're also going to delve into their business, the strategies that made them successful, and most importantly, the valuable lessons they learned along the way. I'm your host, Clinton James. I'm also the Chief Marketing Officer at Water Restoration Marketing. We're a digital marketing agency dedicated to helping restoration companies nationwide secure more high-value water jobs. Now, this show, it aims to provide you with the knowledge and tools you need to excel in the restoration industry. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Restoration Pros Unplugged podcast. I am your host, Clinton. I'm also the Chief Marketing Officer over at Water Restoration Marketing. One thing that my clients always ask me when they're trying to build and scale their restoration business is, hey, how do I get more commercial opportunities? And I'm fully transparent with my clients, right? The digital marketing that I do for my clients in terms of running Google ads or improving their Google business profile ranking in the maps, the majority of the business that they're going to get through that is going to be residential work, right? But commercial opportunities can be huge for a restoration business as they look to scale. And I had the pleasure of meeting today's guest at an RAA event over the last couple weeks out in West Palm Beach. Great organization. Love what they're doing there. Today I'm joined by JP Koenig. JP is the president of RocketLevel Commercial. So JP, thanks for jumping on the show today.
Clinton, excited to be here. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the introduction again. My name is JP Koenig. I'm actually the president and co-founder of RocketLevel Commercial, and we're on a mission to help restoration companies, I would say, take control of their commercial growth.
Awesome. JP, I apologize for butchering your last name there. Koenig, not Koenig. All right, JP. So tell us a little bit about RocketLevel Commercial, how you got started, and really creating a successful business is all about solving problems. So tell us a little bit about the problem that you solve specifically for the restoration industry.
Yeah, Clinton. Well, I think you nailed it on the head that every, I would say, restoration owner wants to grow commercial. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Well, I think the biggest challenge though is two major issues. Number one, they don't know who the decision maker is, and number two, they can't set up a meeting. So really, that's the component that we're solving for these owners, and how I got started. I'll share a little bit about my background, Clinton, but I spent 20 years in big tech and spent a lot of time in software, very successful there. And interestingly enough, I spent the last 4 years selling a do-it-yourself software to help restoration owners prospect, Clinton, into commercial building. So imagine a world where restoration owners buys a software, they can click on a building and it would tell you who the decision maker was with a cell phone and email. Pretty cool, right?
Right. I love that.
But guess what I learned? Restoration owners don't like do it yourself.
Well, I think to piggyback on that, these do-it-yourself options are great for the right type of owner. But a lot of the restoration companies that I work with, they are not just the owners and CEOs of their business. They also have one foot in every aspect of the business, whether it's marketing, whether it's fulfillment, whether it's hiring new technicians. So maybe they don't always have the bandwidth to go out and make those cold calls and try to set up those meetings to generate those long-term commercial relationships.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, really, and that's really why I started Rocket Level Commercial is I wanted to have a do it for you service for these owners where guess what? We use the software for you. We find professional cold calls, hire them, train them, and literally all you have to do is show up and basically build relationships and close business.
See, I when we met in Florida, this is one of the things that kind of jumped out at me because I talk to these restoration company owners all the time. And really, if they're really active in the business and they don't have the bandwidth to go out and knock these doors and create these relationships themselves, they're going out and they're hiring six-figure business development reps. They're paying them huge salaries. There's expenses associated with that between vehicles and insurance. And a lot of them, after 6 months, a year of having that, bright and shiny business development rep that they have, they don't have any new commercial business to show for it. So talk a little bit about how you guys specifically help the restoration companies land those at least opportunities, those appointments with commercial operators?
Yeah, and again, I mean, it's not the wrong way. So any owner that is on this podcast listening and you have gone through that route of hiring a salesperson, it's not the wrong thing to do. However, imagine a world, Clinton, where a restoration owner can basically get 120 face-to-face appointments with commercial decision makers every single year. So let me reverse engineer how we do that, Quentin. So basically, so we have over 100 clients in our restoration portfolio today, and every single one of them have a dedicated, we call it a professional cold caller. And this cold caller is dedicated just to this office that is our client. And every day they're tasked with making 75 cold calls to hard to reach decision makers. They're also following up with emails. They're connecting with decision makers on LinkedIn. And the outcome for the restoration owner is they're consistently getting between 8 to 10 qualified commercial appointments every single month. So that comes out to about 120 meetings.
Now, do you find with most of your clients they have an internal salesperson that runs those meetings, or sometimes is it the owner themselves that's going out on those meetings?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I would say probably our most successful partnerships is when there is at least a senior salesperson that can go and execute on meetings. However, we worked with quite a few smaller restoration companies where the owner is the best salesperson. And they tell us, they said, listen, if you can get me in front of people, I can convince them to use us over anyone else. And we've had a lot of success, whether or not you've got a sales team or if you're an owner and you just believe in your service and your differentiators.
I like that. So these sales reps that you're appointment setters, what's the terminology that you refer to your team members that you're staffing for 'em?
Yeah, so we like to use the tech terminology sales development rep.
Okay, SDRs, got it. So where are you finding them? Tell us a little bit about the individuals that you guys look for, the talent, like what are some good hiring practices that you guys use? And tell me why you think they're so successful at generating these opportunities.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm gonna share my secret sauce on this podcast with you. Uh, but really, I mean, more than anything, Rocket Level, we're basically a recruiting agency. So not only do we understand technology and helping you find the right people to get in front of, but we actually have a full recruiting staff internally, and we've got over 100 sales development reps that represent 100 different restoration clients today. So, really, our secret sauce around that is where we find our reps. Just a little backstory. My co-founder and I, when we started the business, we would primarily just recruit here locally in the States. And one of the biggest challenges we found, Clinton, was that, reps would just not be motivated to make the dials. They would take 2-hour lunches.
I bet every restoration company owner is hearing you say that, and they're having the exact same challenges hiring technicians or front office staff in their locations here in the US. So, what did you and your partner do to solve that problem?
Yeah, and again, like everyone faces it, and it's one of those things with Gen Z. They're not used to growing up picking up the phone, right? They're texting generation. So we actually tried to go to the Philippines, and we failed there actually. So just a learning story is Filipinos are actually really great at the phone, but they're not salespeople. They're more customer success, more geared around client retention. But really where we found, and this is where a lot of big tech is going, is South America. So the reason why South America, Clinton, is a couple of things. Number one, it's near shore. It's the same time zone as the US. Number two, um, everyone is actually English speaking with a strong, of course, Spanish. And basically they can speak Spanish as well. And lastly, there's a really big sales culture there. So if you remember the movie Wolf on Wall Street,
One of my favorites.
that renaissance right now, Clinton, is going on right now where, they are soaking up every piece of information around sales techniques and sales playbooks, and they want to make their country proud. And what we found is the reps are just really motivated and the results have been fantastic for our clients.
Oh, that's awesome. So we know that getting the right person and getting somebody that's motivated to make the dials and do the work is one thing. I'm sure there are some owners that are listening to this conversation thinking, "Oh, I don't know about hiring in Central America. I live in a blue collar state. I don't know if the language barrier is going. Well, I'm sorry, not even language barrier, but the accent might be something that's off putting for these commercial properties and these decision makers that they're reaching out to and scheduling appointments. What do you say to the owner that has that concern?
Yeah, it's totally valid. We've actually worked with quite a few owners in kind of the rural areas of America. And they kind of shared that concern. And there's two things that I'll kind of share with you. Number one, a lot of the reps that we hire actually grew up here in the United States, but moved to Central America just because it's cheaper, better quality of life. So the fluency of English is there. And then number two, our sales training is so strong where I'll kind of debunk a myth for you, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So my biggest myth that I'm going to debunk on this call is that um, decision makers like facility managers and property managers, owners, they don't pick up cold calls. So the reality, Clinton, is they actually don't get as many cold calls as you would imagine. And what we found after over 100,000, calls is that, regardless, as long as, you're well spoken, you understand the industry, people are interested to meet.
I couldn't agree more. I think we're in an age where companies have abandoned picking up the phone and dialing, and they send SMS messages or emails or set up social media campaigns to try to drive new business. So I think you guys are definitely hitting the nail on the head. Not as they're not getting calls that they used to get 10, 15 years ago. You mentioned sales training, and that is super important. But just as important is teaching that SDR about the restoration industry. So tell me a little bit about how you guys do training, or is the client involved in that training process with the SDR?
Yeah, for sure. So our training program is pretty rigorous. So first off, we only hire the top 1% of reps that we actually interview. And then secondarily, because of my background in tech sales, we've built a training program specifically around tonality, around objections, around the industry itself. So really our reps, I would call them almost professional cold callers where they can navigate a conversation with a VP of facilities or a C-level executive, which again, you can't hire a telemarketer or train even some internal staff. We've got some clients that are doing 50, 60 million in revenue, and they've listened to some of the calls and they said they don't even think their top salesperson can navigate a call.
Well, that's quite the compliment. I like to hear that. Now you guys have worked with companies of all sizes, but I know we've had specific conversations about some of the big boys that you worked with. You guys have a great relationship with SERVPRO. You've also worked with some other franchisees like Paul Davis and Rainbow. Can you share maybe one or two stories about some, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a franchise, but some clients that you've worked with recently where you guys have just had some outstanding success in terms of helping them to grow their commercial accounts?
Absolutely, Clinton. And thanks for asking. And again, we also work with independents as well. So coming out of RIA, which where we met, we've actually signed quite a few independents. And really the goal for a lot of these, whether you're a big franchise like ServPro, Paul Davis, or you're an independent is number one, just getting you in front of the right folks and being able to have you tell your story. Right. So quick story. I'm here based in Georgia. I think you told me you lived in Georgia.
Well, yeah, I lived in Dunwoody for a little over 3 years.
Small world.
Yeah.
We actually work with a CERT pro here, and one of the big things they asked us was like, "Hey, outside of you just finding new customers for us, can we send you a list of folks that we would love to have relationships with?" So one of our components of the relationship is people can send us their top target lists or wish lists, and coming from Georgia, as you know, you lived in Dunwoody. Coca-Cola is headquartered here in Georgia. So, they kind of shared, "Hey, Coca-Cola headquarters is here. We tried to prospect in there for several years, had no success." And I told them, "I'm not surprised. There's a lot of security. You can't just drive up and get a meeting with Coke." So after using us for about 4 months, Clinton, we actually identified the right person at Coca-Cola. We got them on a phone after about, I would say, 8 to 12, consistent calls and emails. And, they were standing in Coca-Cola headquarters 4 months later, and they were blown away. And really the outcome of that was they built a relationship, and recently they've gotten quite a bit of work from that meeting.
That Coca-Cola is a huge win for any restoration company in the greater Atlanta area. Can you tell us a little bit more about the different types of commercial wins that your team has been successful in booking and that the restoration companies have closed?
Yeah. So one of the big things, Clinton, I wanted to do when I started Rocket Level is be able to customize the program for every single owner, whether it's a franchise or an independent. So one of the things that we do when we first start the relationship is we really understand like what are your capabilities, right? Do you only handle water damage? Can you do some reconstruction? Can you also do plumbing? A number of things a lot of our, I would say, owners can do. And from there, what's amazing is we can kind of customize the cold call script to, I would say, advertise your strongest services. And from there, we have been able to land, just kind of some things that I would say are wins for our clients are like, of course, when we can find a loss, fantastic. But, um, you know, potentially an emergency response plan for some of our franchises that want to focus on there. Some of our independents have national accounts and they do business outside of California and Georgia and Texas, and they want to be able to have an MSA. So we found MSAs for some of our clients, and then more importantly, given if a client can do a reconstruction or even small jobs, we've been able to kind of land them kind of smaller deals, whether it's commercial cleaning or maybe some drywall stuff, and just got them in the door to build that larger relationship.
Love that. Have you guys ever taken that same model and applied it to generating referral partners for that restoration company, whether it's plumbers or property managers or local insurance adjusters, anything like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for some of our more, I would say, seasoned clients, we've kind of run campaigns where we would basically pull data in their zip codes of every plumber, real estate agent, and property manager. And then we would set up appointments where they could go meet with them and then potentially work out some kind of referral program. But that is something that we've done. We just don't push it as much as kind of getting in front of those other decision makers.
Okay. So most of these restoration company owners, they were never like outside salespeople, right? They're not used to running from one appointment to another appointment. How do you set them up with systems and support so that while your team is generating these opportunities, they know what's going to be showing up on their calendar. They can share their availability with you based on team meetings or projects that they're working on.
Yeah, so we basically have a turnkey solution for the owner. So the moment they come on board and partner with Rocket Level, we set them up with a local number. So it looks like their reps calling from their backyard. We set them up with a CRM. So that way, we're tracking kind of the activity of who we're calling. And then we set them up with a license to Calendly, where basically we can mirror their schedule. And imagine a world, Clinton, you can wake up and you see all of these commercial meetings on your schedule, and then we follow up with every piece of information so that owner can go and attack that appointment, whether it's who the decision maker is, who their current provider is, why are they interested in meeting, do they currently have a vendor today, and really make it to a point where they can strategize for every appointment that they attend.
So I imagine one of the things that's super important for you is data, right? Because you're going out and you're identifying these commercial opportunities, but it's one thing to identify Coca-Cola. It's another thing to find out who the right person is for your restoration company to meet with, what their role is, what their contact information is. Talk a little bit about how you guys are using your tools and technology to get that information to make sure that you guys are scheduling appointments with the right people at these organizations.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the hardest part, Clinton. And this kind of goes back to my Silicon Valley days. I'm kind of a data nerd. So one of the big things that Rocket Level invests in is a lot of those do-it-yourself data platforms. So as an owner, they would typically have to buy it for their team. So with Rocket Level, it's turnkey. We have subscriptions to multiple data platforms where we're basically using your zip codes and pulling every single decision maker you would ever want to meet with, and then prioritizing it based on verticals. So think of senior living, hospitality, property management, education, and we're prioritizing, I would say, the low hanging fruit first. Another component of data that I think might be really interesting for folks is, Clinton, have you ever heard of intent data before?
Um, I think of high intent leads, but not necessarily intent data. You want to explain that to the audience?
Absolutely. So, I'm sure everyone on this call has remember the last time they went on Google and typed in maybe a product or service that maybe you're interested in. Be honest, all of a sudden you got a bunch of ads for
Gotta love retargeting.
it. Exactly. So right now there is technology now where you can use IP address and you can identify commercial buildings that are on Google that are researching fire damage, water damage, reconstruction. And what we're doing is we're leveraging that real-time information to have professional cold callers call into these facilities first before anyone else. So it's kind of cutting edge. It's definitely not perfect, but it's definitely something that we're using to create an edge on data.
Man, that's exciting stuff. Now, since you started this business, you've probably talked to hundreds, if not thousands, of restoration company owners. I'm sure there are some that have been great fits that you've had a lot of success with. You've probably already also talked to restoration companies that aren't necessarily a great fit for your service based on where they're at in their journey, right? Can you tell us a little bit about who is the right fit to work with you guys?
Yeah, for sure. I would say the right fit customer for us is someone who's hungry to grow commercial, that understands it's an investment to basically build, I would say, a commercial pipeline. It's very different from residential, right? And then I would just say an office that just revenue wise is probably doing a little over 1 million in revenue. I think they're just mature enough to kind of take on more commercial and really kind of build that portfolio. And then kind of lastly, just an owner or sales team that really is convicted about kind of their differentiators and have some kind of playbook to be able to walk into, I would say, a decision maker's office and kind of set themselves apart. So those are the qualities and characteristics we find with some of our successful customers.
All right, so let's talk about, let's say I own a restoration company. I decide I want to do business with JP and the team. How long does it usually take for a company like mine to start seeing some results from Rocket Level? Like when do I actually start seeing these appointments and opportunities on the board?
Oh yeah, well that's a fantastic question. So we kind of built this system where literally the moment you sign on with Rocket Level, within 3 weeks of working together, we're going to have you in the field meeting with decision makers. As far as results, again, we can't guarantee losses. However, what we can guarantee is getting you in front of the right people and that people will call you once those relationships are built. So we typically like to take at least a 90-day view when we first start working together to start seeing some momentum. We've had, no kidding, we had a client up in Seattle that we signed, I think about 6 weeks ago. And within 3 weeks of working together, they landed an $80,000 job.
Wow. And that was a direct result of the efforts of your SDRs.
That's correct.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, let's say I own a mid-size restoration company because I got a lot of guys that are fairly newer to the industry that might be listening to this podcast right now. They've got a few technicians, they've got a few service vehicles, they're doing mainly residential work right now. Maybe they're not at that $1 million mark. Maybe they're just short. Maybe they're 750,000, or maybe $500,000. Is that a company that's too small to work with you at this point?
You know, I wouldn't necessarily say too small. I would just say that, again, like you just have to be in the mindset that it's a long game with commercial. And I think that's the biggest challenge for a lot of restoration owners is just kind of understanding that, we can't predict when the losses will happen. But if you meet with enough folks, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when.
Yeah, agreed.
So I wouldn't say that we would push away anyone that's not doing that revenue, but we just want to make sure that, as much as they're interviewing us when we speak, I'd love to interview them to make sure that we're a good fit.
That's smart. We do the same thing with my agency. I guess two of the things that you emphasized in terms of the right fit for you are a company that really has that growth mindset in terms of wanting to build out a commercial division, right? And then the second one, I think, has a little bit more to do with bandwidth, right? If they're an owner operator, they're going to have to set aside time on their calendar every single week to run these. And these appointments, I imagine, are pretty hard to get on the books. So it's not like, oh, because a simple water loss came in, I've got to miss out on that 2:30 appointment I had scheduled with Coca-Cola this afternoon. afternoon, right? So how important is it that that owner or their sales rep has the bandwidth where they can say, no, these appointments are on the calendar. I'm going to run those appointments, even if an emergency water job or a fire and smoke job come in.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think most owners we work with are good at kind of moving folks around. So a couple ideas that we share that work really well is if you just kind of block days, saying, hey, we're going to grow commercial Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, right? And please just set up appointments on those days. And, we've even had offices where, let's be honest, everyone's in sales. And if the owner can't go, they'll send their project manager, they'll send their GM. So I feel like everyone is kind of all hands on deck to build these relationships. And if you have that mindset, we have found that we've been able to help a lot of offices double their revenue. But again, it's that commitment.
Do you find you and your team ever in a position where you've got to coach that owner on the right way to explain their unique value propositions to that potential commercial account?
That's a great question, and I think, just given the nature of our business, we become thought leaders, not just in, like, I would say the, appointment setting, but also the execution, right? So a lot of the owners and salespeople, they'll actually come to us, just as kind of leaders in the space and ask, "Hey, how would you approach this meeting?" So what we've been able to do a lot of times is just kind of share our playbook around, what a good meeting looks like, really how to, I would say break the ice when you meet with somebody, like understanding like really like what their pain points are, and not just trying to drop off a flyer. So it's something that we love to help our clients with given the opportunity.
That's exciting, man. I like I said, my agency, because of the type of digital marketing, the work we do, we can definitely help a restoration scale up on the residential side. Sure, occasionally they'll get a call from a commercial property, but let's be honest, most of these commercial properties, they have property managers. Those property managers already have a list of preferred vendors that they have relationships with. So they're not hopping on Google every time one of their units has a busted water pipe. I think what you do is awesome because it gives these people that are already doing the right things in marketing to residential folks, an opportunity to grow their business on the commercial side without the additional overhead and really gamble of going out and hiring a full-time business development rep who's going to drive through the city, buy people lunch, take people out to golf. Yeah, that was probably effective a couple decades ago, but man, thanks to technology and offshore hiring and the things that you guys do, you don't need to make that kind of investment. Do you want to tell the audience a little bit about what the onboarding process looks like? So if somebody's interested today, first of all, where should they reach out to you, JP?
Yeah. So our website is rocketlevelcommercial.com. I'll also send you my contact if you want to share it with the folks listening.
Absolutely. We will put that in the description and the show notes so that everybody can reach out to JP.
Fantastic. And what I'll also do is I'll just include a link to my calendar. So anybody who's interested, books and time, I can definitely walk you through how we can customize this for you. But back to your question, Clinton, a little bit about the onboarding. It's really in two phases, right? The first phase is really just getting all of the data to make this successful. So we typically get zip codes, wish lists, and maybe even the do not call list from our clients just to line. From there, it takes about a week for us to kind of get their sales rep up and running with kind of all the data and their technology. And then by the third week, is really when we hit the phones. So, phase one, get everything set up. Phase two, actually start testing, calls in their market and, generating a couple of, we call it, the first set of quality appointments. So going back to the 120 meetings, 8 to 10 a month, the first month we work together, we typically try to at least get you in front of 3 to 5 really good quality appointments. And then by month 2, we're at full volume at that 8 to 10. And then usually by the third month, Clinton, we're actually overachieving for our clients and we're setting them up over 10 meetings.
Love to hear that. You guys have had exceptional growth recently. Actually, um, I anticipate you guys are going to have even more growth because I keep seeing you at the events and talking to folks. Can you tell us a little bit about what you think the next big opportunity is for restoration companies when it comes to commercial? Is it going after government contracts? What do you think is that next thing that restoration companies need to be looking at in terms of growing their commercial business?
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, our mission is to help these restoration owners take control of their commercial growth. And really, I think what we're seeing from some of these larger independents and even some of the franchises is really I would say, the speed to MSA opportunities. And the reason I say that is really that helps them kind of expand across kind of regions, especially for some of our larger clients. So that's number one. Number two, I think, is also just, I would say, the need for emergency response plans. So I know a lot of the franchises kind of lean on that as a way to get in the door. I would definitely suggest some of the independents listening, if you don't have one today, this is a really great way to kind of show some credibility, give some value first. And honestly, if you were to put together a plan like that on a first meeting or even a second meeting, most of these decision makers would feel guilty if they didn't use you after that.
100%. You're providing value on that initial appointment. When you provide value like that, it really gives you an opportunity to turn that prospect into a future customer there. All right. Man, JP, I really appreciate you giving us some time. Before we leave today, tell me a little bit about what's next for Rocket Level. What's that next tool, that next service that you guys have in the pipeline that you're going to start offering to restoration companies to help them grow?
Yeah, Clinton, thanks for helping me close there. So again, helping, these owners take control of commercial growth. We're thinking of all avenues, right? So we've already figured out outbound and we're helping them grow outbound. The second two things that we're really focused on this year is inbound. Uh, Interestingly enough,
Yeah.
one of the big challenges we see with almost every restoration company is they have a hard time answering calls. Um,
You are preaching to the choir here. I've vetted probably a half dozen answering services here in the U.S. for clients, and don't get me wrong, there's some good ones out there. But I also work with a bunch of restoration companies that spend literally tens of thousands of dollars running ads only to generate a phone call that goes to voicemail.
Yeah, and again, it's just such an interesting challenge that we find that we're trying to solve for our current clients. And what we're doing is we're building a dedicated model, very similar to the outbound, but a dedicated model for inbound, where our mission is never miss a call and basically create a customer experience that has empathy, that is almost owner led in a sense where, if an owner picks up the phone, they're going to absolutely, treat that phone call as gold, and being able to replicate what an owner would do on any call, whether it's, during business hours or even after hours. So that's a big component. And then lastly is we're really focused on AI. So really where our business is going, that we're developing AI where it can do a lot of the, I would say, like tasks around confirming appointments and really making sure that, that we can leverage AI in a way that I would say complements human interactions.
Yeah, I experiment a lot in terms of our agency, in terms of AI voice agents and things like that. And while the technology has come along leaps and bounds, right? I still think that there is going to be a need, especially on the sales side and appointment setting side, to have that human interaction there. I see in my timeline all the time people these outbound AI agents, and I've listened to them. I've done the demos. Just think if you give me a highly trained, highly motivated salesperson, they're going to do a better job scheduling those opportunities in the restoration space and maybe even for your clients there. So
Yeah, we're on the same page, Clone. I think, AI is definitely the buzzword today. It's getting there, but we're still far off from having it, do the jobs of what humans can do today.
agreed. All right, JP. Again, I appreciate you giving us so much time. Audience, thank you for sticking around. Again, if you're really looking to take your commercial business to the next level, I think JP and his team over at Rocket Level are a great fit. So again, we're going to put in the show notes, but for the audience that's listening, JP, one more time, tell them your website address, tell them how to reach you.
Yeah. Again, Clinton, thanks for having me on the podcast. My name's JP Koenig, president of Rocket Level. It's rocketlevelcommercial.com, and you can book a meeting right on our website.
All right. And we will again put that in the podcast description and the show notes. Again, audience, thank you for sticking around. I hope you got a lot of value out of our conversation with JP today. If you like what you heard, please make sure you subscribe, follow us on social media, and also leave a 5-star review. We want to know that you value the content that we're putting out there for the restoration community. So, JP, thank you again for joining me. Thank you, audience, for sticking around. We'll be back next week with another episode of Restoration Pros Unplugged. And JP, what we like to tell our audience in the meantime, we always want them to stay safe, stay busy, and stay dry. So thank you, JP, again for jumping on here.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Restoration Pros Unplugged podcast. If you like what you heard today, be sure to subscribe, share, and also leave us a 5-star review. We'll be back with more interviews and discussions with restoration industry leaders really soon. In the meantime, if you're a restoration company looking to add more high-value water jobs, you can reach me and my team at waterrestorationmarketing.net. Again, that's waterrestorationmarketing.net. I look forward to hearing from you soon.